Good day everyone, to our panelists, Mr. Jefferson Miranda, our technical advisor panelist, our chairman, Mr. Federico Nueva, and our local panelist, Mr. Randy Otero. We would also like to give our gratitude to Mr. Reggie Tan for supporting us all throughout this thesis project. So our group is group number 10 with the thesis entitled AWIT, an algorithm-focused programming language. So before we begin, let me introduce to you my fellow researchers. So first, I am Felix Janopol Jr., a student from BSCS 3A.
Hello everyone. So I'm Raffy Wamar, BSCS student from Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Pasig.
Good day, sir. I'm the third member of our group. My name is Julius Mella.
We're going to discuss the changes made in our documentation, particularly in our system AWIT, an algorithm analysis focused programming language. Alright, so during our last defense, we have received some recommendations, particularly in our chapter 4 and chapter 5 and also our system. And today we're going to discuss those changes. Alright, so first let us go and take a look first at our statement of the problem. This has a relationship with one of the recommendations asked by our panelists. Alright, and let's move on to chapter 4. Alright, so on chapter 4 of our paper, we were recommended by the panelists to make some changes with regards to APA citation and our discussions. And thus, accordingly, we have added additional information, details in the paragraphs explaining all these modules and the discussions on our evaluation as well of the system in order to better discuss the progress made in our study. As for the APA citation, we made sure to include here the source of the idea behind the programming language evaluation criteria we used to create our evaluation or our survey. All right. Now, before we move on to chapter 5, I will regarding chapter 5, we were asked to change the format of our summary of findings. Well, every ideas on chapter 5, summary of findings, conclusions, as well as the recommendations to be in the number format. Thus, now we have restructured the chapter 5 of our paper, and as you can see, it's now on the numerical, in the numeral format. Here it is. As for the conclusion, we were asked to make it parallel to the statement of the problem. Okay, so here it is. This is the conclusions made that has relationship to the statement of the problems declared on chapter 1. Number 1, processing of data was handled by designating each character in a source code with their corresponding tokens. Each string of token will then be processed by the lexer of the interpreter. This answers the number 1 problem stated from the previous list of research questions stated on the statement of the problem. As for the second one, the source code written by the user is systematically checked by the interpreter by comparison to the symbol table, which contains all syntactically valid symbols. This answers the question how the source code will be processed by the interpreter, which also has the same number. And third one, the intermediate representation is generated through the conversion of the source code into bytecode, which can only be processed by the virtual machine. This answers the problem with the same number. And lastly, execution of the source code is done once the virtual machine transforms the bytecode into machine code. Reports pertaining to the analysis of the algorithm is used in the source code are also generated by the virtual machine. All right, and even though we added this information that answers the questions presented in the statement of problems, we made sure to include as well the information regarding the studies we made, thus making the discussions, the presentation of the conclusion complete. Next, with regards to the recommendation, we were advised to restate the recommendation to include the reason why. And thus, here it is. First, the developers recommend the creation of a programming language with syntax or keywords in another language or dialect within the Philippines to allow a wider audience of aspiring programmers that speaks a different dialect within the country to use it as a learning tool. Previously, these recommendations are just simple recommendations that doesn't state why they are recommended, but now it shows the reason why. So the second one is the developer recommends extending the native functionality of the programming language to support graphical user interface to allow the creation of programs with human-computer interaction characteristics. The third one, the developers recommend the creation of a fully fledged programming language capable of creating business applications so that it can also be used by companies in different fields for various purposes. And lastly, the developers recommend porting the programming language in another operating system, unlike Windows and Linux, so that it can be used regardless of the operating system used by the user. And alright, so lastly, we would like to present the last revision made in our thesis. the addition of another appendix in accordance with the suggestions presented by Mr. Nueva, one of our panelists. Alright, so previously he was asked, or rather we were asked how this programming language can serve as a learning tool, and also suggested that we should add another appendix to show the machine problems that can be answered by the user, which in turn will make the user more knowledgeable while using the programming language. So here it is. Originally, we only have 6 appendices. Now we have 7. And this is the one we added. Appendix F, machine problems. Alright, so Appendix F just shows all the machine problems that are categorized according to what type of functions or what type of object should the user use while creating the program in accordance with the instructions presented here, such as in number 1, to create a program that will find the area of the triangle given its base and height. Alright, so these machine problems does not only exist as machine problem in the documentation, it is also added on our system, which will be discussed later on. Alright, and yep, this is the source code, the 7th one. So now we have 7 appendices, and
Good day, sir. Based on the recommendation, last defense is, sabi po ni Sir Otero is lagyan daw po namin ng current file, which is yung name ng current open file. Then pag wala pa po is blank lang. Then lagyan daw po namin ng save as button. For example, nag-type po tayo dito, ipakita. 1, 2, 3 po. Once na kinlik po natin yung save, syempre hindi pa po siya nakasave. So automatic, sa save as po siya pupunta. Ayan, pagka magsisave as po. Then pag nag-open naman po tayo ng file, example is, ito pong mga sample problems po namin. Example, ito po. Ayan po, closure.awit. Ayan po yung current file na naka-open. Example po, ito, kamusta mundo. Ayan po. Then next is the recommendation of Sir Nueva, which is maglagay daw po kami ng sample problems or machine problems. Ito po. Ayan po, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 section, which is sequential, conditional problems, iteration, function, recursion, and challenge. Ayan po. Then, example, ito, try po natin itong number 4. Try it yourself. And then magre-redirect po siya dito sa another page ng IDE namin, which is may 2 section lang po, which is the text editor and the text output lang po. Example, write a program that will find out if a given year is a leap year or not. Then the user is have an option to click the show solution if ayaw niya na pong i-try isolve. Once na-click niya po yan, makikita po yung solution code for that. Ayan po, then pwede niya na pong i-try. Then for example, ipapalitan na po natin itong parameter ng tao, which is ito po, sample output. Example is 4. Then pag niran po natin, which is tama po yun. Then next is the 6. Pag niran po natin, syempre mali po yun. So hindi na po yung leap year. So then the next is 8. Then pwede po tayo mag-try ng ibang number like 13. Then pag niran po natin, mali pa rin po. Ayan po. Then pwede din po tayo mag-try pa ng iba. Which is, ito po. Number 2. Try din po natin to. Ayan po. Click ulit natin yun para maka natin yung code. Ayan. Example of temperature is 2. Ayan po. 35.6 po yung dapat na sample output niya. Then same pag 6 din po. 42.8. Ayan po. Then ito rin po. Try din po natin tong 5. Ayan. Write a program that will find out if a given age input is eligible for casting their own vote. Ayan po. Pwede pong try natin yung 17, which is mali nga naman kasi sabi sa condition is age is less than or greater than 18 is ang i-return niya po is mali, which is pag 18 above naman like 20 eh di tama na po yun. Ayun po. Ayun po, makikita nyo rin po yung number niya dito sa title nung ayun po 11, then 13, 15, 9, ay, and 5 kanina. Ito po, pwede din po natin ulit try itong nasa 1, which is area to triangle naman po, which is ang hingi siya ng 2 parameter. Lagay po natin muna yung 2 and 5. Ayun po, text output niya is 5. Pwede din po itong 5 and 7 and 22. Ayun po. Also, mas kung gusto ng user na mag night mode, meron din po para much better po. Ayan po.
Good day, panelists. I am one of the developers of this thesis, AWIT and algorithm focused programming language. So, I am here to discuss the development or the recent changes that we have made in our programming language, particularly the addition of MySQL support or relational database management. So, as the recommendation given to us by our technical panelist, Mr. Miranda, we have added support for MySQL so that the users or the developers can now perform MySQL queries and handle databases. So, yan. Firstly, we have to start the MySQL server. Sa case po na to, they have to download and install yung MySQL server by themselves kasi it is one of the dependencies ng language namin if and only if they want to use the database support of our programming language. So, ibig sabihin po, pwede po nilang hindi yun gawin or pwede po silang hindi mag-install ng MySQL server if hindi naman po nila gagamitin yun sa languages or sa programs na gagawin nila. So, ayan. First start po namin. Sa case po namin, ginamit po namin yung sa tools available na po na ginawa nung exam po. Although, we will not use yung Apache and other tools na provided sa exam. Ang priority lang po natin is ito pong MySQL. So, ayun po yung way namin to start yung MySQL server. Since nandun na rin po siya and it will be redundant kung mag-install po kami ng other. Pero, if the new developers po, we recommend na ayun po, gumamit sila ng MySQL server or any method po na suited po sa interest nila. Ayun. So now, since napag-start na po tayo ng MySQL server, pwede na po tayong pumunta or i-launch yung MySQL po natin. So ngayon, launch po natin siya. pass. Ayan. So ngayon po, titingnan natin yung databases na meron tayo. Sa ngayon, meron po tayong 5 schemas na available sa ating database. So what we will do is we will perform different SQL queries to populate po yung database na gagawin natin. This is just to show and demonstrate kung paano po nag-work yung additional support na dinagdag namin sa programming language. Ayan. So, sa repository po natin, meron po tayong additional programs to demonstrate kung paano po nag-work yung SQL support. So, dito po yun. Ayan. As we can see, we have 10, I guess, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11. We have 11 programs to show kung paano po siya nag-work. Okay. So, firstly, ang pinaka meron po sa SQL support namin is of course yung connection po, pag-establish ng connection, and then pag-perform po ng query, and then of course we have to close din po yung connection, and so we have support for that and different stuff as provided here. So first, let's visit kung ano po yung meron din sa connection. So connection AWIT. Ayan, as we can see, we have here the MySQL connect, and for the para po mas madali and hindi na po mahirapan yung developer to understand yung new support po na dinagdag namin sa language. We made it so that yung MySQL methods po is nag-i-start sa MySQL underscore. So ito na po yung prefix nila para po hindi sila ganun kahirap tandaan when it comes to performing database queries. Ayan. So una, meron po tayo dito MySQL connect, and it asks for 3 fields. Una is yung host po, and then yung user, and then yung password. This is just the same with this one. Yung pinerform po natin sa pag-launch nung ating MySQL server sa terminal po. Although we can still use other tools po like yung phpMyAdmin na given na po dun sa exam if mas prefer po ng developer na gumamit ng GUI support. Ayan. So, ito lang din po yun. Halos same lang po sila. Okay? And ito po is to establish connection. Dito po sa part na to. To establish connection so that makakapag-run na po ng queries yung user within the program po. Ayan. Although this one po, ito pong part na to, hindi naman po siya required. Kasi meron na nga po tayong ganito na program na sila na po yung mag-handle ng mga bagay na yun. Okay, ito lang po, pinakita lang po namin to show na meron po siyang effect sa database po. Ayan. So, ayun po. Dito po, mag-return po siya ng true if the connection has been established, and false po kung meron pong error. Ayan. So, ito po, nakikita natin dito yun. And then, ito pong close, later po, i-discuss po natin. Ayan. Pero nilagay po natin to for best practices po. Ayan. So, yan. Pag nilan po natin yan, with connection. Ayan. So, it took some time po to really perform po yung program kasi syempre meron pa po yung connection with MySQL server. So ayan. So now na alam na po natin kung paano magko-connect yung program sa MySQL server, magpo-perform na po tayo ng different queries. First, we will create yung database po kasi syempre ano pong database yung kakalikutin natin kung wala naman pong na-create. So we will look at create database. Ayan. And by the way, meron din po kami syempre ito pong mga bagay na ito pwede pa rin pong gamitin sa aming GUI editor. Ito po. So yung text editor po na ginamit namin before is available pa rin po. And pwede pa rin po ditong gamitin yan. So pwede po natin ma-open dito yun. It's right here. htdocs with samples. SQL. Ito po. Nandito yung mga programs na nasa repository namin. Although, ito rin po is nag-reflect lang kung ano yung nasa repository. So once na may new programs po na nadagdag doon, makikita rin po dito yan. Ayan. So, halimbawa, yung create database po. Yan, andito po siya. So, yung connect po, same with before. yung napaliwanag na po natin kanina. And then below is yung function po for creating yung pinaka-database po. Okay, so ganito lang po yan. Then once we hit run, ayan, makikita po dito yun. And kung babalik po tayo dito, ayan, ganun lang din po yun. So meron po ditong new method na i-introduce. Kung kanina po meron tayong MySQL Connect, now we have MySQL Query. Ito naman po yung nag-handle ng mga query natin using the SQL language or MySQL language. So ito po yung string. Ayan. So this one have two parameters. Una po is yung MySQL connection. Ayan. Yun din po yung binabalik netong connect. Okay, so once na-establish na po yung connection, i-return niya po yun. And ayun na po yung gagamitin natin sa MySQL query. Ayun po yung instance muna yung ipapass natin sa MySQL query so that ma-perform niya po yung different queries. Okay, and then yung next po is yung string which contains po yung actual query. Okay, na ipapass po natin sa MySQL server. So sa case po na to, we have create database and then the database name dito po as the parameter of this function. And then of course, dito po natin siya tinawag. So ito po yun. After natin mag-connect, i-return niya po yung instance po nun. And then if nag-exist po yung instance na yun, mag-proceed po tayo dito sa function na to. And then inside this, andito na po yung pangalan ng database na gagawin natin, which is yung testdb po. Sa ngayon po, wala pa po siya. But if we run this program, makikita po natin na madadagdagan itong database natin. So ngayon po, i-run na natin siya. So balik tayo dito and then create database. Yan. So after pong mag-run ng program, kung titingnan po natin yung MySQL server natin, show databases, makikita po natin na may nadagdag ng table. May nadagdag ng database, which is yung testdb po na ginawa natin gamit itong program po na to. Okay. Okay. Now, ngayon, meron na po tayong database. So, we can use that. So, use testdb. Ayan. And then, pwede po natin tingnan yung tables. And of course, wala po siyang i-return kasi wala naman po tayong create na table para dun sa database na yun. Nag-create pa lang po tayo ng database. So, what we will do next is, yung mag-create na po tayo ng table, which is inside this query.awit. So, let's go there. Query.awit. And again, this part, okay, this part, have been discussed kanina po. So, ayun na lang din po yun. Ang kaibahan lang po is that since meron na tayong database, pwede na po natin siyang ipasa directly doon sa MySQL Connect natin as the fourth parameter. So, yung MySQL Connect po natin could have 3 or 4 parameters, okay? Or arguments rather. So, kapag katatlo po, ang na-access na po is yung buong database. And then, if we pass a database name, yung database po na yun, yung magagalaw ng connect na yun, which is ito po yung pinaka-advice natin since magpa-perform po tayo ng query, hindi po sa lahat ng databases na meron yung MySQL server natin, but doon lang po sa database na kailangan natin. So, it is advised na isang database lang yung gagawin. But we added po yung tatlong arguments in case na mag-create po tayo ng bagong database kasi ano pong ipapass natin kung wala pa nga po nagagawa. So, ayun po yung logic behind that. Then, next, same with before, MySQL query, pinasa po natin yung MySQL connection and then yung query po na pa-perform natin which is a simple create table. So, create table and then table name passed here as the argument. And yung call po dito could be found here, dito po sa baba. Yan, again, same with before, nag-create po tayo ng MySQL na variable and then inassign natin yun once na tinawag natin yung connect. And yung connect, mag-return siya ng instance ng MySQL if yung connection po is na-establish ng maayos. So, pinasa po natin yun together with yung pangalan po ng table which is yung test table. Ayan. So, ito po yung, again, ito po yung query natin sa pag-create ng table. Create table, then test table. Ito po yung value nun. Test table. Then, next, ID. We have ID. And then, ito po yung, ang tawag ito? Ito po yung parang options na nilagay natin doon sa fields na yon. ID yung field, and then ito po yung options. So, hindi po siya null, hindi po siya nullable. And then, auto-incremented din po yung field na yon. And then, we have 2 additional fields po, which are yung name and then the description. Both are varchar. Ayan. And then, same with ID, hindi rin po siya nullable. So, pretty standard MySQL query. Yan. Then, we assign a primary, of course. Primary key. Ayan. Inassign po natin yung ID as the primary key. Okay. Then, once we run this one, ito pong testdb natin is magkakaroon na po ng isang table. Kasi yun po yung purpose ng program na yun. So, run natin siya. Awit. Then, query.awit. Ayan. So, ayan. Ngayon, titingnan na po natin yung tables na meron doon sa testdb natin if nadagdag nga po talaga. Ayan. And as we can see, meron na po siyang isang table, which is yung test table na ginawa natin using the query.awit. Now, kung titignan po natin itong laman nito, so una, describe po muna natin siya kung ano nga po yung fields na meron siya and then ano po yung characteristic ng fields na yun. So, describe test table. Medyo pang siya tingnan. Ayan. Ayan. So, as we can see, ito lang din po yung nasa code natin kanina, which is yung in. And then, since primary key siya, na bago na po to hanggang 11 lang yung bits na meron dun sa ID natin. And then we have varchar 255 and then varchar 255 for both the name and the description. And then ito lang din po yung nilagay natin kanina. So una, ito po yung primary key, yung ID natin. Then auto-incremented din po siya. So ayan. Now, kung titingnan po natin to, so kung titingnan natin yung laman ng test table natin, so select everything from test table, makita natin na empty set po siya since wala naman po tayong ginawa to populate yung table natin. And on that note, gagawin na po natin yun, okay? Ayun na po yun. Since meron po tayo ditong query insert, ayan. So ito pong query insert na program na to is, ang purpose lang po niya is to populate, okay, or to insert data doon po sa table natin. So, dito po yun. Ito po yun, same with before, of course. Meron po tayong MySQL query, and then ito po yung, ayan. Ito po yung ating SQL connection, and then katabi po nun yung query natin, which is yung simple insert lang po. So insert into table, yung table natin is in test table of course, so insert into test table, then ito po yung mga fields na populate natin, which are yung name and then yung description. Yung ID, syempre di natin siya lalagyan kasi auto-incremented naman na yan. Okay, and then yung values mo na nilagay natin are test1, and then first value for the first row, and then test2, second value for the second row, and then test3, third value for the third row. Ayan. And then again, dito po sa case na to, once po na insert, balikan po natin yung kanina. So, query. Yan. Sa case po ng kanina, okay, yung sa kanina po, yung query natin is create. Okay, so create table. So, sa part po na yun, ang i-return lang niya po is true or false. True if successful, false if not. Okay, so ganun po yung logic nung MySQL query kapag create po yung query natin. Sa case po ngayon na insert, kung mapapansin po natin, ang condition or yung guard po natin before tayo mag-proceed sa actual code natin, ang condition po is query is equal to 0, meaning if may na-insert po ba, ganun. Kasi ang na-return po ng MySQL query natin kapag insert yung query, okay, so kapag insert po yung gamit natin, ang i-return niya po is kung ilang rows yung na-create. Of course, kung isa lang po, edi 1 lang re-return niya, okay. Nonetheless, ibig sabihin, kapag 0 po yung na-return, ibig sabihin wala pong na-create, okay, ibig sabihin may error po. Ayan. So makikita natin dito, meron siyang nadagdagan na ang table, and then kung ilan po yung laman ng query na yun. Ito po yan, yung variable na yan. Then dito natin siya tinawag. Ayan. So ngayon, i-run na po natin siya to populate po yung database natin. So src, await, query. Ayan. Yan. So awasin po natin, medyo matagal siya kasi compared to other programs po na nirun na natin, mas marami na po itong ginagawa kasi nagpopopulate na po siya ng database. Ayan, so ngayon po, titingnan natin siya. So, i-run lang natin yung previous command, which is in select from table. Ayan, so makita po natin, ito lang din po yung nilagay natin doon sa program natin. So, test1 first value, test2 second value, test3 third value. Okay, now, syempre, hindi naman po lahat ng developers gustong makipag-interact with the actual MySQL server po, or ito pong part na to. Syempre, hindi naman po lahat is komportableng makipag-access sa side na to. So, syempre, yung language po namin also supports yung pag-fetch po ng data from the database. Okay, so yun na po yung ginagawa nito. So again, ito po yung method or ito po yung function to create yung connection. And then ito na po yung ating command, or ito po yung pinaka-function to select po yung data from the database. So same with before, ito po yung test table natin, and then ito po yung query, and napakasimple na po niya. Which is ayun lang din po yung nila natin dito kanina. Yung select everything or select star from yung test table po. Okay, so dito, true false lang po siya, or rather, mag-return po siya ng array, dito sa MySQL query, true false lang po to. Okay, kasi meron po siyang additional function, or meron po tayong i-introduce na new function para po din sa pag-fetch. Okay, kasi ito pong MySQL query is simply performing this performing this query. Pero meron po tayong special function to hold po yung function or yung to hold yung values na meron tayo. And that function is yung MySQL fetch. Okay? And before po tayo mag-proceed, again, yung insert lang po yung merong condition or may different return value na kapag insert po yung query, number po ng inserted fields yung nire-return. Dito po, true false lang siya. Same with create and other queries po na gagawin natin. Okay. So, yung MySQL fetch po, ang pinaka-ginagawa po nito is kinukuha po niya yung query, and then, binibigay niya po or nire-return na niya yung rows na meron tayo. Rows or row, depende po kung meron tayong condition. Okay. So, since dito po wala naman po tayong where or where na condition, lahat po binalik niya. So, lahat ng available rows, binato niya po sa atin. Okay. So, ito na po yan. So, meron tayong loop to loop through doon sa rows na ni-return. So, meron tayong bilang. Bilang is a new function po na nilagay namin, syempre para mapadali rin po yung pagpabasa or pag-interact po with the array data structure na meron kami. So, since array po yung ni-return ng MySQL fetch, kailangan po natin malaman yung size nun. Kaya po meron tayo nito. And then, for each data po na ibabato, meron po tayong ganito po. Okay. Then, after po ng execute multiple select, meron din po tayong execute single select. Single select is, ito na po yung gumagamit ng where. Okay. Although, technically speaking, hindi naman po talaga to single lang. Okay, but since yung where po natin or yung where condition natin is iisang ID lang po yung magmamatch, so single select lang po siya. Okay. So same with dun lang po sa multiple, ang kaibahan lang niya po dun is that yung MySQL query or yung MySQL fetch, ang ni-return niya is not a two-dimensional array. Kasi po dito sa case na to, two-dimensional array yun since meron po tayong first array which contains yung array po ng mga rows. Okay, so yung inner array is yun po yung mismong nagko-contain ng data. Okay?